Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Beef Productions. Just making sure everything's working okay. Looks all good on Twitter, Blue Sky, Live Push, and on Twitch. So we're all good this morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Getting up into let's see. Oh, I'm pulling the wrong weather forecast here. But yeah, we're getting up into, let's see. It's gonna be sunny all day and looks like a high of the 50 even. So a little chilly, but enjoy the sunshine. It's probably the last of the cold weather we'll see in the near future. Um, this week's episode, National Weather Service has issued a White Supremacy Watch. Conditions are deteriorating rapidly. Seek shelter and a translator. In case you haven't heard, the National Weather Service has ceased issuing weather alerts in multiple languages because their contract for their language translation service has been canceled. Um, yeah, this isn't this isn't satire. It's our current reality. If you wrote this for a show, people would say no. It's not possible. Like over 68 million people speak a language other than English at home in the U.S. And predictably, the comment sections are filled with the usual refrains of "Speak English," "This is America," etc. But let's be clear, safety is not something you can earn by accent. It is something that is due to everyone from the Constitution. It's a national obligation. It's a social obligation. It's part of our social contract. Anyway, meanwhile, in Texas, measles cases are surging and children are being hospitalized for vitamin A poisoning. What? This is the direct result of disinformation peddled by none other than our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the fringe non-scientist who thinks that he has some idea of how health works. His fantasy cures have made it all the way to the cabinet, and now his utterances are hospitalizing kids. Maybe we should look at that. But also, let's not overlook the actions of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Last week, 3 UPenn students, 2 graduate researchers, and 1 undergrad had their visas revoked with no warning, no hearing, no transparency. Why? No one can say. Just quietly erased from the system. Little Marco is feeling his oats this week, I guess. And before we'll also touch on Tacony Creek Park's tire cleanup, the absurd genesis of Trump's tariff policy, and the April 5th hands-off protests. First, I'd like to welcome our guest, Bill, founder of SPQR Stage Company, to help us talk about all this stuff. Let me bring him up on screen. Bill, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
My name is Bill Sterritt. I'm the artistic director of SPQR Stage Company located in Summers Point. And it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate being on the show and sharing your opinions.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about SPQR Stage Company. What do you guys do in your own words? What is it that SPQR does? And also tell us a little bit about what SPQR means.
Well, there's several meanings to that. SPQR actually started in Los Angeles when I lived in Los Angeles for 30 years. And what we used to do, I'm a graduate of Carnegie Mellon. What we used to do is we used to workshop plays, and then I would enter them in contests. And I did quite well. I came in second in the South Coast Repertory's New Play Festival, sponsored by American Express. and I was a finalist at the Eugene O'Neill National Playwrights Conference. So I had a friend who was an actor, and we would be rehearsing one day, and he said, "You know, we're all in SPQR now." And I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And my last name is Sterritt. So originally he said, "Well, it's the Sterritt Peripatetic Quintessential Repertory," which I thought was pretty amusing, right? So then I had a space in Koreatown in LA, and then it became the Sterritt Permanent Quintessential Repertory. And then we moved after 30 years to the Jersey Shore, and now I think it kind of stands for Summers Point Quintessential Repertory, or whatever, whatever you will. But our our mission is to do nothing but original work. We don't do remounts. We don't do retreads. We're not interested in that. We're interested in putting forth original work by local playwrights who have trying to form a school of playwriting similar to Atlantic Theater Company and those type of things, and I get a chance to do my work too.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's been quite a learning experience, and I think that what we're trying to what we're trying to put forth is that there's a lot of thinking that doing doing like a revivals and things like that, or shows that have been done, people are afraid that people won't show up I mean, people will show up for it's a guaranteed. And we think that there's a hunger for new work. We think that we could, one of the things I keep proposing down here is that this could be the next Park City, Utah. It could be the next Williamstown, Massachusetts, where all of a sudden we're getting national exposure. And that's what we're trying to do.
Nice. You often produce plays that have a political bent, a little commentary on current events.
Correct. We the actually the play that I reached the finals um, of the O'Neill is a play called The Road to Damascus, and it's about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and as relations to it's about hostages, and are we hostage to God, or are we hostage, and so that one I was up. This will make you laugh. I was up against August Wilson for the slot. And Lloyd Richards was making the choice. So you can imagine it was like Notre Dame playing the School for the Blind. But but, but I mean, it takes you a while to realize just how far you've come. Um, and I think it's important in life to celebrate your victories, no matter what size they are. Did I get in? No, but I got there. I got to define. I mean, I got to the cut of 24
You
out
got
of
to a
20.
spot where you were being read opposite August Wilson, so
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's something to celebrate in that,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think, I think a lot of times in life we have this goal, and if I don't get to this goal, I mean, it was part of it. I'm sitting in LA, and you know how that one goes. You're like, this year's got to happen. This year it has to happen, and you have people that you went to school with. Some of them it's happening for. Some of it's not happening for. But you get on this thing where it's like, well, I've got to get to here. I've got to get to X. And a lot of times we look past all the good things that are going on, because we're driven because you got to get there. And then, I mean, I knew some people that did very well in LA, and they were some of the most miserable people you'd ever want to meet because it was never enough, you know? So,
I heard a very powerful speaker at a conference that I was producing recently, talking about the this very idea, and I found it interesting that this spans all kinds of creative output, and people experience this same thing all over the place. Um, I wonder. sometimes if it's a symptom of modern society, or if it's just always been there, and it's just something that more of the people that we have around us are focused on now. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that the other thing that drives me bananas is the definition of success. Okay. And I just think you can't allow your success to be defined by others. You have to, grapple with what you think is success. And in my view, if you're living your life doing what you want to do, how are you a failure? Right? I mean, you get into that thing all the time. I mean, you get in. Art is competitive, no question. Um, but you have to be secure in your own skin and realize that, hey, life is pretty good. I mean, I'm an artistic director of a theater. How bad can it be? Right? I mean, it's just you just can't allow others to define whether you are a success or not, in my opinion. You have to be able to say to yourself, well, look, I have a lot of people I went to graduate school with in Pittsburgh who have quit. They've given up. They've quit. And it's like, they're not happy people. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's all a matter of, I think it's just a question of being comfortable and realizing, like I was talking about a few minutes earlier, the victories that you have in life, and the progress that you make in life. And if you're doing what you love to do, I don't see how you're a failure. It's a whole value system that's put up there that I really have real issues with, because it encourages people to be judged by others. And I just reject that.
Speaking of judged by others, have you ever encountered this kind of duality that I'm talking about in this episode, where what you're writing is too close to satire, but the truth is even funnier?
Oh yeah, sure, for sure. I mean, um, it depends on what the theme of the piece is, what the mood of the piece is, and what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah, I mean, I have a tendency I like to say that I paint. That it's not, David Mamet has this dialogue. Hey, did you come? Yeah, did you come over? Yeah, I came over. Did you have the beer? Yeah, I brought the beer. I'm completely the opposite. I like to paint, as I call it, and I like to try to fly in the sky when I write. So sometimes that gets me into trouble because I'm perceived as pretentious. Um, but that, once again, as you grow as a writer, you get to a point where I am now, which is, hey, you like my work? Great. You don't like my work? Oh well. I mean, it's you just can't allow, like I said, you can't, and that's a progression, because when I was younger, I would, if I got a bad review or something, boy, it would bother me for days. Now I just kind of slough it off like, oh well, I mean, I'm not going to stop. So you just it does. You try to write, like, for example, I wrote a play called Calliope Rose, takes place in a lighthouse off the coast of Maine, deals with myth, deals with, how we believe in myth, how myth explains our existence. My big breakthrough play was a play called Pumpin' the Chihuahua, which is really about Catholicism, you know, um, and Hollywood and all that other kind of stuff. And then I wrote a play that got me second prize at South Coast called Caribbean Romance, in which one of the characters was Fidel Castro.
Okay.
And then I moved on to another play called Freezing Antarctica, which is about capitalism, socialism, the climate. I mean, those are all pretty political. So I'm not afraid to shy away from it. I think that it's important to me to do stuff that makes people think. And at one point, one of my slogans was I wanted to send them out screaming into the night. So,
I,
so,
I
so
don't
at least I got a reaction.
I don't know that that's the point of my show, but I do want people to think. Like that's the point. I started the show during the pandemic, just mostly just to get us all doing something, and then yeah, it kind of evolved, and now it's just about getting people to think. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think.
well, that's important. I mean, a lot of people aren't.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have preconceived notions and they don't understand the truth. They don't want to see the truth. I mean, I think a lot of this is generated by resentment. Um, I know that when I was a kid, I had a friend and his father worked for Beltel. And when he was 18, his father got him a job at Beltel. And I'm sure that that's been replicated throughout the country. I worked at General Motors. My grandfather worked at General Motors, and now there's no job for me. And I think that, I think that there's a resentment and a kind of a feeling of entitlement where it's like, well, where's my job? I should
Right.
have a job. And I think that that's a lot of the pablum that's being pushed is, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. It's like Trump said first term, don't sell your house because we're bringing manufacturing back. And then he didn't. So, I mean, I think that that's part of this issue. It's like with everything. It's
No,
like all,
also there's
yeah,
a rose-colored glasses issue. I was having a conversation with somebody about immigration, and I'm a second and third generation, or first and second generation, depending how you look at it. My mother was an immigrant. My grandmother was an immigrant on my father's side. Um, and immigration really being that close to immigration makes me believe in the power of immigration, in the power of immigrant communities, to not only improve but support the country as a whole. And the conversation I was having was with a South Philly Italian woman who was talking about her grandfather and her father immigrating from Italy. And to use her words, he never took a dime from the government. I'm like, he did.
yeah,
You might not call it that, but
right.
and one thing, every immigrant, who came here, who immigrated here, they didn't immigrate here just because it looked nice on a postcard. They immigrated here because they thought there was opportunity. And that opportunity was available because of what the federal government was spending. Like the federal government was from the 1930s to the 1960s was doling out money on everything.
Sure.
And no matter what you did in your life, you were getting money from the government. Like it was part of that's when we created the social contract, the New Deal, and the idea that our society should be based on serving all the people. um
Sure. Well, here's the irony. They are the descendants of immigrants. That's the irony. And now it's the same people that are saying, "Oh, we got to keep immigrants out," are the descendant. They're you know their ancestors came to this country for precisely the same reason. Look, people don't come to a country unless it provides opportunity,
right,
unless they can view opportunity. If we were a country that provides no opportunity, no one would be trying to get into our country.
right.
So I mean, I think it's important. I don't know. I don't know, James. I think the whole situation we're in is a absolute crying out for education. It's just no, it's just an absolute cry for people to educate themselves. Look, when people want to become a citizen in the United States, they have to take a test. They have to be able to know how the forms of government work and the like. But we don't require that from our own citizens, which is crazy.
I
I
mean, we
mean,
sort of do, but
you,
it's not. It's not. Yeah, it's not exactly the same. I mean, we require people to pass history class to get, to graduate high school. But no, it is. And I think education has failed. Public education and even private, especially private education and homeschooling has failed the more than a generation of children with not providing them a wide enough basis of knowledge. People don't even understand that, around the world, countries feel responsible for all the people in them, and it's not just an American thing. And it's not just in America that we translate emergency alerts to other languages
yeah,
than the primary one. And it's not just in America that we have access to wealth or social mobility and all that. You're right. It is a cry out for a better education, better, wider source of experience. I don't know how we get that to everybody. I get me personally. I have a 3-year old. I'm trying to raise her so that she has as wide a base of experience as possible. But what do I do about the next three? The 3-year old next to her that doesn't do anything but go to school and come home and watch TV every day.
yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I was just going to say, comment on, how many people know how Congress even works? How many people know how a bill is passed? That was stuff I was taught. I mean, civics was a big, and it's just disappeared.
Hmm.
And I think that it's just important to understand when how the system works, so that when candidates make claims, you can fact check them. You can say, no, that's not right. This isn't instead of just, I mean, I think Trump said something one time where he was going to take something to the Supreme Court. Well, he can't take it to the Supreme Court. It has to work its way up to the Supreme Court. But a lot of people, if he tells them the sky's purple, they believe it.
I mean,
Um,
we've got a fact check that we're not going to be able to cover this week. We're going to have to probably cover it next week. But the Trump administration is claiming they had a huge win on the deportation slash expatriation case for the El Salvadorian prisoners,
right.
and they didn't. They had exactly the opposite of a win. They had a unanimous decision by all the members of the Supreme Court that yes, in fact, if you're going to deport people on this 1700s law, that you do have to give them a day in court to at least make a habeas petition. So,
Sure. Well,
um,
that's what makes our country our country.
yeah,
That is that you get your day in court, and you get a chance, and you're judged by a jury of your peers, and so on and so forth. And I was listening to him the other day, and he was talking about, when Biden was in, he passed the CHIPS Act, and he said, "Oh, it's a terrible act." It's like, it's not a terrible act. It's about manufacturing chips in the United
yeah.
States.
It's exactly
And
what you want to do. You want to bring
yeah,
manufacturing back to the United States? Well,
right.
what's being manufactured right now is chips.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just kind of like, it's like 1984. It's like up is down, down is up, blue is green, and nobody fact checks it. Nobody's no and then people are terrified to stand up and say, uh no, that's not right.
Yeah,
That's a lie. That's a lie. I don't know. I mean, like, it was frustrating last year because it was all about the price of eggs, and it's kind of like, well, you're willing to give up your freedoms? I mean, I'll pay $20 for a dozen eggs before I do that.
right.
So I mean, that's where that's where a lot of the issues are. That's, I mean, it's unfortunately, I will say this about the Republican Party. They are very good at boiling stuff down to a bumper sticker, and winning elections on it.
Yeah, they've
Um,
got they've got advertising to the lowest common denominator like on point.
oh yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know anybody that does it better.
yeah. Well, I remember when Glenn Youngkin was running for governor of Virginia, and they had a political ad, and the Republican elephant was saying, um, critical race theory, critical race theory, critical race theory, and the Democratic donkey had like a 4-paragraph speech, and
Explaining
it just
critical race theory.
yeah, yeah, and so I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I will tell you my own personal reaction. I think whoever's been running the Democratic messaging, they need to get somebody else because they just, they need somebody that's more effective, in my
Well,
opinion.
they need somebody who's willing to buy into the populism in the center, really. A lot of people say it's the left populism. It's not left.
Right.
Progressive ideals aren't leftist. They're just what literally the rest of the world has as the baseline.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Universal health care, taking care of, homeless people by making sure they have housing, making sure that, people don't fall through the cracks and having a real social safety net. These are quote unquote leftist ideas here in the United States, but they're, just really middle of the road stuff. I mean,
Well, I'll tell you one thing that would make you laugh was when I was out in California, in Orange County, they had a chief executive who was playing the derivatives game,
mhm.
and he bankrupted the county. And these are all rugged individualists down in Orange County. And what was the first response of all these rugged individualists?
To get bailed out.
Call the governor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to real quick jump back to what you're doing at SPQR. May 3rd, you're doing a stage reading of one of yours?
Well, yeah, we're doing it's actually, we like to call it a living movie. It's a screenplay that I wrote. It finished in the top 20% of the oh my God, what's in the capital of Texas? I just lost it. It's where the University of
Top
Texas is.
20% of 12,000 entries at the Austin Film Festival.
Yeah, yeah. So I had this screenplay and I was like, what am I going to do with this? So what we do is it's a little bit more than a reading and a little bit less than a production. And people are on book, but we're in costume. We have horses, we have helmets. We actually run the Kentucky Derby, our version of the Kentucky Derby. We um, we ask people to come to dress up like they're going to the Derby, and pretty much that's it. I mean, it's a fun time. We have a gigantic cast, most of whom are coming from New York. But we it's about 2 hours in length, maybe an hour, hour 45, 2 hours, and then we also stream it. So if you're sitting at home and you want to have a derby party, if your grandmother lives in Juneau, Alaska, and she wants to see it, we can stream it so that they can watch it on their devices. And it's an interesting situation. One year we had um, a Chinese actress for Newark, and her mom was watching in Hong Kong at like 4 a.m. So it's another thing that we try to do. That I believe we may be the only theater. I know for sure we're in that area. We're the only theater company that's doing that kind of stuff. But you try to build out your audience and provide, get more patrons that are watching on the stream.
Yeah,
And
I've always framed it as a matter of accessibility. If people can't make it out to your theater for one reason or another, it's definitely a way to have an accessible access to your content, your production, and give people the opportunity to see it that wouldn't otherwise be able to.
sure, sure. So I mean, I would say this is more of a commercial piece. It's a rom-com. But it has its politics. It's about three syndicates coming to Churchill Downs to win the Derby. The first is entirely female operation, a female owner, a female jockey, and a filly. The second is a down on his luck breeder, because I mean, in doing the research, I found that the horse racing game has changed dramatically. It's not really, in the old days, it would be like several syndicates from that area. Now there might be one because it's become a rich man's game. And, horses are bred all across the country and around the world. And frankly, some of them are flown in on jets. That just blew my mind when I read that. But there's a down on kind of a down on his luck, desperate kind of Kentucky breeder who has a jockey who was killed, and he has a jockey who blew the Derby, who's been kind of hiding as an exercise boy, and is talked into taking over the horse for the Derby, with the proviso that they're just interested in the stud fees. They don't care if he wins. But then, of course, and he has a father who's won everything but a jockey father who's won everything but the Derby. And then there's the third syndicate, which is a trainer based on Bob Baffert. I don't know if you know who
I
he
don't.
is. Okay, he's like this guy that's won the Kentucky Derby like a gazillion times. And he has a horse that's owned by a Saudi prince. And the horse has never lost. It's like Secretariat on steroids. So, so those are the three competing things, and there's all these kind of interacting romantic things going on at the same time, and it's a good time. It's a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to we're telling people one thing that I wanted to bring up on the show is if you are a first responder, if you are, a healthcare worker, whatever, come over. You can come for free. Okay. That's our way to pay you back. If you are, it's going to be our 5th year of operation. So if you come in and say 5 to me, admission is $20. We'll let you in for 5. We just really want to get a large, raucous crowd in there to make the afternoon. And you can't beat it. It's going to be fun. And after that, you can watch the real Derby somewhere, But then at the same time, with the stream, you can have a Derby party. If you're sitting in Philadelphia, like, I'm not going to drive like 45 miles, 50 miles, but I have a lot of friends. One guy buys the stream, and you have a party. You have a Derby party and recreate what we're creating in Summers Point.
Got it.
So,
What would be? So I ask this all the time of folks who have a show coming up. What would be the most amazing thing that, in your mind, somebody watches this or sees it? What sort of hope do you have for what they take from it?
um, well, first of all, because this is kind of a commercial piece, that they would laugh, that they would care, that they would enjoy it. Um, Obviously, I mean, if I'm going to rub the magic lamp and have the genie tell me, obviously a film would be great. But we've also discussed, this is kind of interesting. I've also discussed maybe turning this into a musical. And but I would need I'm not a librettist. I would need somebody to write. I mean, I can write the book, but I need a music person for that. So I mean, look, um, we have, and particularly these days, we have so little that makes us laugh in this, unless it's absurd, of course. But there's so much that we toil under negativity so much. We don't relax and laugh and enjoy. And just, like I said, side by side, just laughing and having a good time and taking that experience away. Like I know, I mean, I have come to firmly be a positive thinker in my old age because because you live longer, first of all. But there's just so much good in this. There's so many things to make you. I mean, you have a daughter. That's a wonderful thing. You know, um, that brings you joy. There's like a scarcity of joy anymore.
The
Nobody has,
the the reason why I giggle is because my in my family, you know, like there's a kind of sort of a general expectation of men as we grow older to get grumpier and more brusque. And in my
Sure.
family, it's exactly the opposite. We start brusque and grumpy, and we get a little bit less and less so as we get older.
Right. Well, it's the same thing. Listen, it's like my wife. Okay. Um, we were in LA and I'm struggling and struggling and struggling, and she's there and she's always there. And it took me a long time, and this is talking about growing older and becoming more philosophical, to turn and look at her and say, you know what? All this other stuff is secondary. This is what's important. Okay. And it's really weird because it just liberates you. You're liberated. You're not like, it's not about this. I mean, I had this old beat up Saturn. I mean, it was like, really beat up. And I would go to meetings with agents and stuff driving it after a while. I'm like, hey, this is me. Okay. If we're going to work together, you need to know who I am. And I don't care. I'm not going to I mean, it's so silly out there. I see people buy these high-end cars and they sit in a garage 5 days a week, and they're like eating beans in order to pay for it, and it just gess nutty. There's a real, I mean, out there, it definitely gets nutty after a while. You can get sucked into it if you're not careful. But once you realize what's important, that stuff just doesn't matter
Right.
anymore.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It
It's
doesn't.
also, like chasing the Joneses. You're never going to become Jay Leno. The best you can hope for is to have that one or two cars that sit in the garage 5 days a week, I guess. But,
Yeah. 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 But I mean, that I'm just telling you from my own personal experience. Um, uh, it just liberates you, And I tell people, I say, well, and I mean, I do it. I'm going to be honest. Tell people, I go, you know what? When you're sitting there stressing and worrying, you are in neutral. Okay. And all you are doing is expending energy. You're not solving the problem. You're not attacking the problem. You're just worrying, So I mean, there are times when I worry, don't get me wrong, but I try not to, and I try to stay on the beam of like, just stay calm, just relax, you know. Um,
It's that's what I always say about technical problems on shows. I'm often, the production AV, or what have you, the technical director, and people are always almost universally coming to me and going, "You're always so calm in a crisis." I'm like, because if I don't stay calm, I'm not going to solve the crisis. The instant I stop to get very upset about whatever's going on, I'm not thinking about how to resolve it. I'm thinking about what's going on.
yeah, absolutely. And then sometimes it's sometimes the problem has been jacked up to hysteria.
Right.
Like you're looking at somebody and they're just like, this is a disaster. And it's like there's one light out on the grid or something. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you know what I'm saying? And you just feel like, look, it's not a disaster. It's a minor snafu.
Right.
Let's just
Let's work through it.
call what it is. Yeah. And look, there in what we do, this world becomes so artificial that it gets to that point, and you need to be conveying a real world attitude, which is like, I mean, I tell people, I say, you know what? An EMT is more valuable than me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, what we do is great, but it's superfluous in comparison to people that do real things. I mean, not that we don't do real things, but when you're in this kind of bubble, things can get way out of proportion, and everybody just has to, for me, listen, for me, it's the acting. Okay. That's that. I really don't pay much attention to anything else. Now, if the script is bad and the acting is bad, I start counting lights. I I look up and I go, they got 4 Licos, they got a couple of Fresnels, They got some LEDs over here. But our our thrust is the acting, and we ask people to go on an imaginary journey with us. For me, theater is about imagination. I mean, if you want to recreate reality, I guess you can do that. I had a theater in L.A. and I had a woman one time. This was famous. The theater that I had a photocyclorama, 14-foot white walls up built into to the building. Standing there with this woman who's going to shoot like a short, and we're standing right in front of the psych, and she says to me, "Well, this film takes place in an insane asylum, so I guess I'm going to have to build some white walls." Yeah, I mean, this is what you get. I had another company that worked with me came in one time and said, "Oh, your grid's 14 feet, it's not tall enough. We have a balcony." I said, "Okay." They went down the street. They spent like 30 grand in rent. I went to see the show. The balcony door was used once.
Right. Yeah.
It's just kind of like,
Yeah. Think through the problem. Think what you're actually, resolve what you actually need to resolve.
right.
I wanted to talk about Tacony Creek Park, because I think this is, we've been talking about things that, have solutions and things that, could have easier solutions. Um, in Tacony Creek Park, there's often illegal dumping, specifically tires get dumped all along the creek. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for the people that live around there. It creates not only an eyesore, but environmental issues like chemicals being released into the water, an increase of pests and bugs, all kinds of things. But uh, you know, over the weekend they had 200 volunteers roll up their sleeves and form a human chain and remove literally thousands of illegally dumped tires. Um, Sometimes when the city can't handle things, sometimes when the government doesn't handle things or refuses to handle things, it falls back onto the community to handle things. And I don't, I don't know if that's I waffle on this so much because I appreciate the stories of the community coming together to replace essential services. Um, to uphold the social contract, to make it so that we live in a space that's nice and clean and has opportunity. And yet, I still think that it's important that those services be provided by the government. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. While you're talking about it, I'm just wondering if there's something that could be constructed along the terms of a buyback, which is, how with certain areas, you bring your gun in, they buy it back from you, and it takes guns off the street. Maybe something similar here, where you would offer, if they're dumping tires, there would be some sort of organization that would buy the tires back, and then maybe be able to pass those tires back on to some person or something or some organization that could use the rubber from the tires to create something else. That would, to me, seem would be, if I'm sitting there with my four bad tires and someone's willing to pay, a pretty good price for them, why would I dump them in a creek when I can take them to that person and sell them?
Yeah,
I mean, just a thought.
I mean, I've seen that before. I don't know how it effective. I mean, obviously, it's not effective here. I don't know why. I had looked into it a long time ago, and I don't recall what the main problem was. I think that the main problem was that they were only accepting a certain number to keep the budget to a specific number or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, if there was some way that you could make them pay off on the other end, then you might solve that problem. If
yeah.
there's some way that that rubber could be repurposed and sold so that they would recover what they're paying for the tires, that might be a panacea. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, the community does get together every once in a while to make political commentary. I was both encouraged and discouraged by the April 5th hands-off protests.
Hmm.
Um, it ended up being global. There ended up being, demonstrations all around the world by both Americans and American expats and people in other countries who just think that the current administration of the United States is on an authoritarian bent and needs to be stopped.
Right.
I can't really argue with them. Like it is interesting to see the things that were discussed and not discussed. Israel and Palestine wasn't discussed at all in any of the organizers' literature. There were demonstrators that held signs about Israel and Palestine, specifically, about ending the war in Palestine. There wasn't much mention of um, the Russian Ukrainian war, and the whole international scene that's driving that war and other wars in the area. Um, and to your earlier point, I think this might be a problem of education. Most people don't really understand the landscape of what actually drives these conflicts.
Sure.
Israel's desire to expand, Syria's even existence, but its alignment with either Russia or Western powers. The ability of Russia to import and export valuable goods is why the Ukrainian war exists. So, like their whole economy, the whole future of their economy is based on this play for African resources, and it's them versus China versus us versus India, in all playing for African resources, and Russia would literally have no physical access to it if they gave up all of the Ukrainian territory that they've claimed.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. Well, it's funny that you bring up the Israeli-Palestinian conflict because that was my what my play was about that got to the finals of the O'Neill. And I think in a lot of these situations, we argue the effects rather than argue the cause. And for example, with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, in my opinion, there's one question that you have to ask yourself and say, what would fill people with such hate that they would go kill infants? Right. And until we that's the cause, if we have to look in the I said earlier in our conversation, we need to look in the mirror. There's a lot of these things where we actually have to look in the mirror and be honest with ourselves. And I'm a firm believer in dialogue. I think dialogue is very important. But I think in dialogue you have to be able to hear some things you don't want to hear in order to move that dialogue along. Um, so I think that with Ukraine, I mean, come on, it was a naked invasion of Ukraine, and who are we? We I hear this crap about America first. It's actually America last, because we have I don't know. I just feel we have a moral obligation that when something like that happens, it's our obligation to defend the party that's threatened. And it's not about, oh, well, you know what? Let's make a deal. Oh, well, you got these minerals we need for like Teslas and things like that. So we'll help you for that. It shouldn't have to get there. It should be a moral responsibility, not a fiscal one,
and I
in my
think
opinion.
for most of the country, it is a moral obligation. I think that's why, April 5th happened, why those protests happened, why they were so well received, why and participated in. I think, you know, the National Weather Service story, halting multilingual alerts. If you read the story on 6ABC, they even quote a story about a Spanish-speaking family who lives in Indiana or somewhere in the mid. I believe it was Indiana. I could be wrong. It could be Kentucky or anywhere in the Midwest. Anyway, recently there were the storms that we had a couple hundred tornadoes in one night, and they
Right,
received a weather alert on their phone warning them to take shelter, but it was in English, and they ignored that one. And then a couple minutes later, they got the one in Spanish, and they listened to that one, and immediately sought shelter. And a storm rolled through and destroyed their house. It would have killed them had they
right,
not gotten that alert in Spanish. But
right,
they did get the alert in Spanish, and like, yes, it's a moral obligation. It's a literal constitutional obligation. It's in our social contract from the beginning to take care of everybody that's here, regardless of their status or why they're here. We need to take care of them, and to the best of our ability and with the resources that we have, and being, the biggest, baddest country there is, so to speak. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but we do have the largest economy. Doesn't it make us responsible to expend those few bucks that are required to translate our weather alerts into pretty much every language available?
sure. Well, let's just put this on the stupidity scale. Um, you and I are two human beings who right now speak the same language. Now, I have another human being over here who doesn't speak the same language as I do. So I'll let him die on the basis of the fact that he doesn't speak the same language that I do. Pretty stupid, you know. I'll just tell you a real quick story. I just got back from Europe, and took a tour of the Vatican. And our Vatican guide, this woman, was telling us how grateful they were that the U.S. and Canada came into World War II. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's, I mean, and then after the tour, we got into an interesting conversation with her about Georgia Maloney and Trump and all this, and she's terrified. Um, it's dumb with a capital D. You take care of other human beings. We're all on the planet together. It's not, you don't deny somebody something just for the fact that they speak differently than you do. You don't, you don't deny other people basic human rights just on the basis that they're coming to the country seeking the same thing that your ancestors sought. It's just mind blowing. And I know that a lot of it is kind of resentment because it's not our, like I think I was saying earlier, people want to go back to the 1950s and it's not happening. You can blame globalization. Look, I don't view globalization as necessarily a bad thing. And I think that um, you've got two choices. I also tell this story at the time. There was a guy who had a livery stable in the Old West. He saw the first horseless carriage. He turned it into a garage. The genius of America is innovation. The genius of America is being able to innovate. And instead of like trying to bring back assembly lines or whatever your grandfather did, there's plenty of opportunity out there. You'll have to retrain, but once you do, it's this fear of the unknown. We're in a brave new world now where a lot of things have changed from when I was a kid to now. When I have problems with my phone, I hand it to my son. He fixes it in 5 seconds. This is the economy that we're in. And to pretend that first of all, being resentful doesn't get you anywhere. Being resentful of anything or any person doesn't is not a progressive, you know, impulse. It just keeps you where you are. I know because I'm surrounded by it down here. I see, and there's this I'm always joking because it's like this fog of negativity that comes in off the ocean, and these people are all can't say have a good thing to say about anything, and it's kind of like, well, I guess if because they have not been exposed to other worlds, they just they're born here, they grow up here, they die here,
Yeah.
and it forms their opinions of everything because they haven't really ever had to be in a gray area. Everything's black and white, and some of the dumbest things you would ever want to hear, you hear down here. But they don't. They're talking to like kind, and so it never progresses to the point where someone says, I don't know, maybe it's
Maybe it's
A instead of
us.
B.
um, the talking about absurd things. I don't think you could write the story of how Trump's current tariff policy came to be and like actually get it into a space where it would be produced. Um, it's a little absurd. Jared Kushner, Ivanka's husband, is called up by Trump in his first term. He says, Jared, find me somebody who can help me shape national trade policy, make me look tough on China, make me look aggressive about China. So Jared Googles it. And he finds an Amazon bestseller list. It has this little known economist named Pete Navarro. His book that is called Death by China, and he puts this book. I'm almost positive Trump doesn't actually read anything, so I don't think he puts the book in front of Pete Navarro, or in front of Trump. But he reads the dust jacket and he likes the tone of the dust jacket. He doesn't read the book, according to him in his quoted interview. He never reads the book, but he calls up Pete Navarro and he says, "Hey, would you like a job?"
Right.
And literally he hires him as Trump's economic strategist in Trump's first term. Pete Navarro wrote this book. It's a complete work of fiction. He quotes constantly a supposed economic expert that is an anagram for his own last name. This guy doesn't exist that he constantly quotes in his book. It's just him quoting himself.
Right.
And he does hold a degree in economics from Harvard, but in the economics world, specifically at the time Jared Kushner looked him up and called him, he's seen as a complete quack. Like
Right.
the degree is meaningless. Like everybody disagrees with him.
Right. Right. Well, this is what happens when look, everybody gets apoplectic about career politicians. Career politician, good. But this is what happens when you elect people who, in my view, are unqualified, don't know what the hell they're doing, and part of it has become, unfortunately, it's the celebrity. We're electing celebrities. I mean, when you have an administration that doesn't know what the hell they're doing, witness Signal, um, you know, uh, what do you expect? And that's the thing. That's why I was saying education is very important in this country, so that when somebody tries to hoodwink you, you're being
But how do we go back and educate all the people that have been hoodwinked by Trump and Trump himself? Like Trump is the poster child for what you're saying. Trump has no desire for knowledge. He has no grasp of reality
right,
whatsoever.
right.
And
I don't know the answer to that question. We may have to sacrifice a generation or two, but I think we need to start,
yeah.
and hope that in the meantime we don't, that the sky doesn't fall. As weird as it is, I think that is, I just don't see Trump jettisoning Elon Musk because I think Elon Musk could destroy Trump. There's something to be said when Elon Musk's son tells Trump to shh in the Oval Office and Trump does it.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that
I think
I,
Elon Musk has lost interest though, which
well,
may be our
he
only
might.
hope.
Yeah, maybe, unless you get 2 for 1. Sometimes I joke and I say, "Where's Lee Harvey Oswald when you need him?" But 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 yeah, I don't know that answer to that question, James. The only thing I can think of is you start planting now with future generations that can come to the fore, realizing when someone tells them stuff that they want to hear, that he's telling them stuff that they want to hear, and not be a responsible, um, for lack of a better term, politician. To be able to tell, to be able to tell, look somebody in the eye and tell them the truth. We've gotten to the point now where the symbiosis between media and politics has gotten absurd, and we elect show horses instead of workhorses who are too busy worrying about if they're going to get how many likes they're going to get, and that hurts the country. I mean, that just hurts the country. They're not interested in governing, Trump included. I mean, what Trump wants to do is win. Oh, I won.
Well, he
I'm
wants
the
to keep
president.
it. I'll say this till time ends. He wants to keep himself safe. He's literally afraid of jail. That's what he wants.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
He's
Um,
he literally. So, and I'm sorry to drag this on. It is 11:02, but I just want to say this and get your take on this. He literally the other day, faced with the on the 5th, faced with all the video evidence of protests, multi millions of people coming out in every city around the world, even rural places that he won handily, having thousands and hundreds of thousands of people coming out to protest his administration, came up with this word salad trying to turn it around that it wasn't him that they were protesting something something. And when you read it from the perspective of trying to analyze it as if you were the one saying it, you can kind of come to realize he does not understand that what he says or does can have negative consequences.
right. Well, my wife talks about Napoleon of being the world spirit on horseback, and I think um, part of the problem here is it's not Trump, it's us. I mean, it's members of our country, voters, that put him in that position. Um, and I think, again, earlier on, I said we all have to look. There are moments when we all have to look in the mirror, and this is one of those moments where you have to look in the mirror and say, how did this, what was our complicity in this?
Mm.
That's one thing that I think you need to do to start to try to remedy it. Now, what's going to happen? Who knows? But at least it's good that there are protests. That's an encouraging, healthy sign. That's a sign of a healthy democracy, and not one that's atrophying, in my opinion.
I want to recognize it's 11:04. And I'm gonna outro the show in a minute. Do you have any last thoughts? Anything that you want to bring to the conversation that we haven't covered?
No, it's really been stimulating conversation, and it's been good to get to know you, and have fun. I mean, it's fun, right? And when you find a kindred spirit, it's always great. And I thank you again for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. It can be unbelievably frustrating to try and have these conversations, but it is good that there are people willing to have them. I think that that's all. At the end of the day, I have a friend who's a performer, and he was opining that he's frustrated because anytime he wants to talk about one of his upcoming shows or talk about promote his album or anything like that, he feels like he's not doing enough. Um, and I can't find the words to encourage him to keep doing those things. But it is frustrating but necessary to have the conversation and to keep doing your art.
Sure, sure. Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Your conversation is your art.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important to keep that going. And I'll just go out on this one thing. I have friends, uh, and I talk about trying to create a dialogue with the other side and things like that. And they're like, "Well, they just don't listen to you, blah blah blah." It's like, yeah, but you can't stop trying to have that conversation. You have to at least try. And if you're coming up against a blank wall, well, that's not your problem. You're trying. So I just honestly believe that I'm going to keep trying, and if I mean, because I have them down here, people that just are, it's like talking to a brick wall, but I'm not going to stop.
Mm.
So
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go to a one up of me, outro the show. Feel free to stick around. I've got a couple extra minutes if you want to stick around and talk. But I'm going to outro the show so folks can stop watching us blabber on this podcast.
okay, all right,
Thanks
you're
so
on.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys for joining us for the show. I really appreciate it. I appreciate that you join us every week. Next week we'll have another great show for you. Thanks again to Bill Sterritt from SPQR Stage Company for reminding us that the line between satire and stagecraft has not just blurred, it's completely vanished. Today's stories were surreal, but none of them were fiction. The National Weather Service is now filtering who gets to survive a storm based on what language they speak. The Secretary of Health and Human Services is getting kids hospitalized with pseudoscience. And the Secretary of State has revoked visas for students like he's playing a fascist raffle. You couldn't write this stuff. You couldn't. We didn't even get to fully unpack the Supreme Court's rulings on the 1798 Alien Enemies Act or the celebration of those rulings by Trump, despite the court explicitly saying that immigrants still have the right to be heard. But when you control the headlines, you control the story, right? Next week, we'll go deeper into those legal rulings, the Penn visa revocations, and how silence and erasure have become the new weapons of the state. Until then, thanks for showing up. Not just showing up and tuning out, but tuning in and listening because the script got weird. The script always gets weird when power feels threatened. Stay with us, listen to the stories. Hopefully you get something from them. If you like what you've seen and heard, or you feel like something is relevant to your friends, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, send it to them. Send a link to your friends or quote it on your own social media. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. We'll see you next week.